I would like to make sure that my colleagues and especially those who were not here in 2009 understand that there are many of us who are opposed to Obamacare, as it's called, the Affordable Care Act. And in democracies, almost always, the majority governs and passes legislation. The fact is that this legislation was hard fought. It was a legislative process. I didn't like the end of it, but I'm proud of the effort that we made, and frankly, the other side of the aisle allowed that debate to take place. So to somehow allege that many of us are not or haven't fought hard enough, I think does not comport with the actual action that took place on the floor of the Senate. But during the course of that discussion conducted by my friend from Texas, he said, quote, if you go back to the 1940s Nazi Germany, look, we saw in Britain Neville Chamberlain, who told the British people, except the Nazis, yes, they'll dominate the continent of Europe, but that's not our problem. Let's appease them. Why? Because it can't be done. We can't possibly stand against them. And then he went on to say, I suspect those same pundits who say defunding Obamacare can't be done. If it had been in the 1940s, we would have been listening to them. They would have been saying, you cannot defeat the Germans. I resoundingly reject that allegation. That allegation, in my view, does a great disservice for those brave Americans and those who stood up and said, what's happening in Europe cannot stand. And then there were those who went to war because of the barbaric and great threat to civilization and everything we stand for. Amongst them were my father and grandfather. I do not agree with that comparison. I think it's wrong. Now, I spoke to Senator Cruz about my dissatisfaction about his use of this language, and he said he only intended it to be applied to pundits and not to members of the Senate. I find that a difference without a distinction. I find that something that I think I had to respond to. I do not begrudge Senator Cruz or any other senator who wants to come and talk as long as they want to, as long as they can, depending on the rules of the Senate. But I do disagree strongly to allege that there are people today who are like those who prior to World War II didn't stand up and oppose the atrocities that were taking place in Europe.